Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, Blue Liquor Shield, Death Light, Sharks, Peasants, Vassals. I'm a useful idiot, and I did a video just recently on Citigroup, too big to fail bank, and now I'm going to do a video on JPMorgan, another too big to fail bank. And they're in the news recently as well because of the hearings over the whale derivatives loss, trading loss, now reportedly at $8 billion. So it started out at $2 billion, then went to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now it stands at $8 billion, and it's probably a lot more than that, but we'll never know. And then also in the news, JPMorgan recently is they wanted dismissal of all charges in a class action lawsuit about silver price fixing, and it came out in the trial that they were market makers, and they even have their own COMEX exchange there at JPMorgan, and yet they managed to squeeze by these charges. So, but more interestingly to me than these two recent events is just the overall culture of JPMorgan, and this too big to fail banking culture of which JPMorgan and Jamie Dimon in particular exemplify. And the interesting thing to me that has come out is the Josh Rosner report, an analyst who came out with a report now about JPMorgan out of control. And it confirms in a very extensive list what a criminal operation the JPMorgan is. And I don't want to single them out because, as I often say, if one bank's doing it, they're all doing it. And it turns out to be true again and again and again. So I see no reason not to continue using that axiom. But JPMorgan has been indulging in silver manipulation in spite of the fact that they won this class action lawsuit. They're involved in a quasi-legal derivatives market of which this whale trade is part. And he was fully on board with what was going on at that trading desk, and that was what is at issue here. Once again, they try and paint it as a rogue trader. But the interesting thing for JPMorgan, just like the theme with the Citigroup as the king of pay and walkaways, since 2009, or between 2009 and 2012, JPMorgan has paid $8.5 billion in settlements. That's 12% of their net income over that period. So the fact that that bank could shell out 12% of their income as a tax, as a cost of doing business in settlements over that four-year period shows that it's worth a lot of money to be able to do what they do. And that doesn't include $16 billion in legal defense fees. And so they're willing to pay handsomely to get access to all their other profits, which with JPMorgan, predominantly the derivatives market, they have total bank assets of $1.8 trillion theoretically on paper, but they have an exposure to $69 trillion in derivatives. They are the king of derivatives, and that is the heart of the beast. That's the bread and butter for these guys, and once again, JPMorgan exemplifies that. So anyway, let's run down all the criminal activities that JPMorgan is involved in, and this includes Bank Secrecy Act violations, money laundering for drug cartels, violations of sanctions against Cuba, Iran, Sudan, and Liberia, violations related to the Vatican bank scandal, violations of the Commodities Exchange Act, failure to segregate customers' funds, executing fictitious trades with customers on both ends of the trade, misrepresentations of CDOs and MBSs, foreclosure fraud, multiple settlements on that, violations of Service Members Civil Relief Act, illegal flood insurance commissions, fraudulent sale of unregistered securities, auto finance rip-off schemes, illegal increases of overdraft penalties, violations of federal and state laws, municipal bond market manipulation and bid rigging, violations of the Sherman Antitrust Act, energy market manipulation, artificial market making in Japan, shifting trading losses, fraudulent derivative sales, and obstruction of justice. But other than that, they're a fine, upstanding business, just another too big to fail bank on Wall Street. And the irony that this man, Jamie Dimon, is purportedly Obama's favorite banker. So Carl Levin, in the recent hearing, was quoted as saying, "It exposes a derivative trading culture at JPMorgan that piled on risk, hid losses, disregarded risk limits, manipulated risk models, dodged oversight, and misinformed the public." Well, Mr. Levin, welcome to the fabulous world of banking. And don't pretend you don't know that, didn't know this all along, and also don't know that all the other banks are doing the same thing. And in fact, we all already know what a criminal enterprise JPMorgan is, with their associations with the WorldCom collapse and the Enron collapse, both of which JPMorgan's settled huge claims against them for hiding the financial health of both of those companies. And of course, JPMorgan was deeply involved in the MF Global scandal, another huge, gigantic criminal enterprise. And also recently, as mentioned, they are being buried in lawsuits right now having to do with the whale trader debacle, and then the Bernie Madoff case. There's actually still litigation coming against JPMorgan for being involved in the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. And so JPMorgan, of course, colluded in the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme, another criminal act, and then manipulation of LIBOR. So they're going to be dealing with that, as all the banks, one after another, have to deal with it because they're all doing it, and as a matter of fact, they're all still doing it. So there we have it, JPMorgan in the news for the hearings on the whale trade, and a lot of impending lawsuits having to do with LIBOR, Bernie Madoff, and this is how it goes. But now they are just going to juggernaut through this like they do everything else because they own the United States government. So JPMorgan, another too big to fail bank, a little snapshot of where they're at right now. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.